Good afternoon. Good afternoon, members, guests, and our leadership from Parliament, Honourable Speaker, and my co-chair. We welcome you to this long-anticipated introductory engagement. The Joint Committee on the Financial Management of Parliament started its induction sessions in November 2024, Speaker, with briefings from our content and research supports. They were present in our meeting. The sessions scheduled for this week are a continuation of that induction. Okay. It is only fitting that we start our engagement with an introductory session to allow the EA and STP to bring to the committee's attention matters present to the institution's leadership, including matters related to the restoration of the buildings destroyed in the 2022 fire and temporary engagement in place to ensure permanence work continues, Parliament's long overdue organizational structuring and how it will improve services and efficiencies in the institution. 3, the leadership of the institution's positions in respect of the best possible model for funding Parliament so as to ensure that it can effectively execute its constitutional obligation of holding the executive to account. And lastly, Chair, progress made as far as developing regulation to the Financial Management of Parliament or Provincial Legislatures Act. I think also welcome our STP and also allow our co-chair to greet the members, and we will continue. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Honorable Ndlovu. Greetings to you as the co-chair of this Joint Standing Committee of Parliament. Greetings to the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Secretary. Greetings to honorable members, both from the National Assembly and the NCOP. We also have Honorable Speaker, the Deputy Chief Whip of the largest, yeah, the largest party in the National Assembly, as part of a member of this committee. Honorable members, welcome and Happy New Year to all of you, and I believe that you still have the sweet smelling fragrance of the flowers that you bought this month, the month of February. We met, like the co-chair has said, Honorable Speaker, previously, to do the induction of members, and there were issues that members have raised emanating from the work that was done by the 6th Parliament, and issues thereof that were still outstanding, which were accordingly communicated, and follow-ups were made in preparations for this meeting. And honorable members can be assured that the layout of the program covers or provides for the issues to be presented here in this meeting of the Joint Standing Committee. So if there happens to be any other matter, we will still make provision for those matters to be attended to. Those matters just have to be raised on time so that we can find a way to schedule them in our meetings. This is not the first time we'll be meeting with the Speaker. It's just a matter of having to go through the schedule of Parliament and see when our meetings can happen. And we want to thank you so much for creating time to be here. And when we requested that some of the meetings may happen before the initial time of 18 hours. You were very understanding, and we must apologize for any inconvenience that could have been caused on your part. We also want to welcome and thank the presence of the officials of Parliament, both from the National Assembly and the NCOP, led here by the Speaker and the Secretary. We want to thank you so much for your presence. I was joking with the Speaker here that we have so many participants coming from administration. How I so much wish that one day you can be in Parliament and we can also be in administration. Yeah, let me hand back to you, Co-Chair. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chair Lekanyan. Can we now go to the apologies? Cindy?
Good afternoon, members and guests. We have received apologies from members Hansinger, Badenhorst, and Denner, who have other commitments. Mr. van Rooyen, Memaotwe, and Mr. Hadebe are running a little bit late.
Sorry, Chair, I'm here. I'm just God, hard to miss me.
Yes, Badenhorst is here, Honorable Hadebe. As we also heard about the apologies, can we now request everybody to introduce him or herself? Honorable Sanindlofu, co-chair of the committee.
Molapi Soviet Lakhanyana, co-chair of the committee.
Maintenance. Ngikuphi ekuzizwe Hadebe ilunga lale committee ngiyabonga hlala.
Doris Dlagote leloko la committee ena. Ke a leboga mme.
Good afternoon, Honourable Speaker and our leadership here. I'm Honourable Helen Neal-May, here as well as on Scopa. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chair. My name is Mark Feni. I'm a member of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, co-chairs, Speaker, honourable members and members of the parliamentary staff. It's Member Cameron Dugmore, member of this committee. Thanks.
Good afternoon, all protocol observed. My name is Rikus Badenhorst. I'm a member of this committee.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Clark. I'm a member of this committee and all protocol observed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Mtembu, Parliamentary Staff, Office of the Secretary.
Good afternoon, honourable members, Madam Speaker. I'm Claudia George, Secretary to Parliament.
Good afternoon to the co-chairpersons and honourable members. My name is Togo Titiza, Speaker of the National Assembly.
Good afternoon, co-chairs, Madam Speaker, and members of Parliament. My name is Duke Mgaga. I'm the Human Capital Executive.
Good afternoon, co-chairs, the committee, Speaker. My name is Nomonde Mpefumlo, Acting CFO in Parliament. Thank you.
Good afternoon, co-chairs and members. My name is Sepiso Nache from the National Assembly table on behalf of Mr. Klasu.
Good morning, honourable members. My name is Rachel Ngobo from the Office of the Speaker.
Good afternoon, co-chairs. Good afternoon, honourable members and colleagues. My name is Fiso Tombela is my surname from the Speaker's office. Thank you.
Good afternoon, co-chairpersons. and honorable members. I am Sipho Mtakati. I'm in the office of the House Chairperson, Honorable Becky Khatebe. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Co-Chairs, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Members, Secretary, colleagues. My name is Leon Gabriel. I'm the Division Manager for Knowledge and Information Services.
Good afternoon, Co-Chairs, Speaker, Honourable Members, STP and colleagues. My name is Brenda Mashika, the Division Manager for Strategy and Governance. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Co-Chairs, Speaker, Honourable Members, STP and colleagues. My name is Lita Geza, Change Management Advisor.
Good afternoon, Co-Chairpersons, Honourable Speaker, STP, Honourable Members. My name is Moloto Matapo, Spokesperson for Parliament and Division Manager for Parliamentary Communication Services.
Good afternoon, Co-Chairs, Speaker, Honourable Members, STP and colleagues. I'm Emelise Nieser, Chief Audit Executive of Parliament. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Members. My name is Renee Scott. I'm the Acting Executive Director for the Legislative Sector Support Division. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Co-Chairs, Madam Speaker, Honourable Members and STP colleagues. My name is Simon Masheho, Built Environment Advisor in the Office of the STP.
Afternoon, Co-Chairs. My name is Marva. I'm from Parliamentary Communication Services.
Good afternoon, Honourable Members. My name is Moiselo Samahlekise, the researcher of the committee.
My substitute voice. Thank you very much, Honourable Co-Chairs.
Thanks very much. I think obviously we'll not know each other until on the next session, the third session and the last one, especially the members and the staff. So I'll allow Honourable Speaker to also say something in relation to the chairperson of the NCOP. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Apology from the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. She is at the PAP. Unfortunately, when the time changed, she was not able to adjust her plenary sitting. So she has tendered her apology. I'm sure the letter either is on its way or it has arrived. Thank you.
Thanks, honourable members. I hope that is understandable because it is ourselves who requested that the meeting be shifted to 2 o'clock. According to the program, it was supposed to be 6 o'clock. So I think that apology is accepted. Can we get a mover and an adoption of the agenda, please? Honourable Maki.
Yes, Chair, I'm moving for the adoption of the agenda.
Honourable Mayor.
Thank you. I second the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you. Honourable members, I hope you have all received the minutes of the last meeting. Can we check if there is any correction? Is there anyone who does not have the copy? Can we check if there is any correction? Can we go to page 1? Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. page 6. Page 7. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. The last page 13. Can we also get an indication of the adoption of the minutes? Honorable Hadebe.
Chairperson, I move for the adoption of the minutes.
Honorable Mayor.
I propose I second the adoption of the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, honorable members. Greetings once again. I think we must now move to conduct the business of this meeting, which will take us to the item on the presentation by the Executive Authority of Parliament. In this case, we would have expected that both the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces will make presentations or will pass remarks here. So in the absence of the National Chair, Honorable Speaker, we will still provide for her in one of the meetings that will be happening, depending on her availability, because we don't think that we can deny her that opportunity to speak to the committee. So it's a matter which we will put on the shelf now and give this opportunity to you, Honorable Speaker, to address the committee.
Thank you very much, Honorable Khanyane, and thank you very much to our co-chair, the honorable members, senior officials of Parliament, as well as the team supporting this joint standing committee. One would like to thank you for the opportunity that you have availed to us. As you indicate, it is indeed an introductory meeting and a broad overview. And just to indicate to both you, chairs, that the presentation we're making has been jointly agreed between myself and the National Council of Provinces chairperson. So it's not an overview of one house or the other. In the detail, when you will be engaging the officials, then the two secretaries of the two houses will then go in detail in terms of the responsibilities of those two houses. Chairperson, in our presentation, we actually reflected on some of the issues that you have raised. Some of the details will indeed emerge from the various senior officials' presentation. So for us, we really thought we will present the overview of the functions and administration of Parliament to you as a committee. And I gather that some of these might have already been done during the induction, your own induction, as well as the broad induction of the members of Parliament when we started in July. We also want to outline the transition to the 7th Parliament, as well as the program of action to address some of the legacy issues that came from the 6th Parliament. In terms of our content, we look at the mandate, vision and governance, as well as legacy issues and Parliament strategic priorities, administration and performance of Parliament, as well as the challenges and proposed remedial action. The mandate of Parliament derives, as we all know, from our Constitution, which established Parliament and set out its functions that it has to perform. As we would all agree, even when we do our campaigns as various parties, we always indicate that this House, which is Parliament, represents the people and ensures that the way in which government undertakes its business is responsive to the people's needs, and that our Constitution, as the apex law, also ensures and outlines how provinces would also be represented as part of the House. So when we talk of Parliament, we really talk of the two houses, not just of one. We also indicate that in executing our mandate, we do so by ensuring that we pass legislation, which is really our primary responsibility, overseeing and scrutinizing executive action, and ensures that in the way in which we work, we foster public involvement as well as cooperative government and also international participation through parliamentary diplomacy. We see ourselves as an activist and responsive people's parliament that improves the quality of life of South Africans and ensures enduring equality in our society. And again, I want to affirm that as part of our mission, we represent the people and to ensure government by the people in fulfilling our constitutional functions of passing laws and overseeing executive action. There are certain values that, in terms of what we have to do, supported by our administration, is to ensure that there is openness in the work that we do, there is responsiveness on how we respond to issues that communities raised, also accountability, firstly as members in terms of our own responsibility, but also holding the executive to account, and that as the administration, we offer professional services to support the work of members with integrity, but also ensuring that there's mutual respect and we work in a team spirit. In terms of governance structures, as outlined in the FMPPLA of 2009, it sets out that there is an executive authority of Parliament, which is the Speaker of the National Assembly and Chairperson of the National Council of Province, where on undertaking the matters of Parliament, they act jointly. And then this committee is an oversight mechanism which really ensures that the resources that are given to this institution as Parliament is done for the purpose at which it is budgeted for. And the Secretary of Parliament then becomes the accounting officer, and that as part of ensuring an independent eye on the management of these resources of Parliament, the Executive Authority will appoint an audit committee. So we see our work reflecting three pillars, as I've indicated, which I'm not going to mention. And the mechanisms utilized by Parliament to execute these mandates, as we all know, includes plenary debates, motions that are tabled in the both houses, petitions, and committees in the National Assembly and National Council of Provinces. It is also done through public participation, where, as we know, in particular, the National Council of Provinces would interact by having, engagements where they would go out to communities and actually ensuring that they are continuously in touch with what communities want and listening to them, but also giving feedback and working also with the various structures such as SALGA and engaging with traditional leaders through the National House. It is these committees, meaning the portfolio and select committees, that over 90% of the work of both houses is driven and submitted for consideration and resolution by both houses when they sit. We've put there a table which really indicates from 1994 how Parliament has evolved, both in terms of legislation, public involvement, oversight and accountability, cooperative government, and international participation. We will recall that in the first term, in 1994, really it was more about drafting the constitution, but also setting out the legislative framework. And as it evolves, it became clear that public involvement, not just in ensuring that people can access parliament through television, but also ensuring that effective public engagement processes are undertaken in all our work, particularly in legislation. Then there are key issues, as you have also highlighted, Honorable Chairperson, that have come from the previous administration, not just the 6th administration, but I would dare say even the 5th, which we still need to continue to engage and formalize. The report on Kader Asmal on the review of Chapter 9 and associated institution. I want to indicate to you, honorable members, that this recommendation still needs finalization. There were proposals that came out of that committee which reflected on the journey that we traversed maybe from 1994 and raised particular question whether some of the institutions that we have supporting democracy, are they not duplicating functions? Is there no need maybe for alignment going forward? So that's the work that we're undertaking. We've had, I want to report to you that we've already met all of the various Chapter 9 institutions together, what they've been doing, what are the challenges that are facing, but also to start the discussion about what the Kader Asmal report indicated. And I must say, Chair, that this is an important work that this administration, in my view, needs to conclude. You would have seen that the Human Rights Commission, for instance, have even thought of approaching Parliament, but even the courts, to ensure that their recommendations must actually be of a standing like the public protector. So these are some of the matters, in my view, that we would need to finalize and resolve. The Kgalema Motlanthe ad hoc committee, whose task was to assess key legislation that have been passed since 1994 and see to what extent these accelerate fundamental change. At the end of that report in the 5th administration, this work was forwarded to various committees, particularly in line with what the recommendations were saying. Again, Chairperson, I think we will need to conclude on this report because from where we sit, not much had been done by various committees to really look at what the outcomes and the recommendations. Part of this relates to the current legal or rather litigation that has been piloted by the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Because one of the recommendations of that Kgalema Motlanthe report was actually saying government needs to develop legislation on land redistribution as it is suggested by the Constitution, particularly Section 25, subsection 6. You would recall that that committee even made a draft legislation, obviously, which was really a scope creep because they did not have a mandate to go as far. But I think after that, the committee then was not able to proceed with some of those recommendations. So I just want to say it's a matter that we will be reporting in our next meeting how far we have gone with. On the Judge Zondo Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture and corruption and fraud, again, this is another report that we're working on, and I'm sure the 7th administration will be seized with that one. Similarly, the reports of the public protector and their recommendations that have been brought to the House. The other matter that comes from the 6th administration relates to how we incorporate court directives in lawmaking processes to effect remedies to laws, both substantive and procedural matters that were struck off the roll, one of those being the traditional leaders and Khoisan legislation. Again, the review of pre-1994 legislation, I can indicate, Chairperson, that from the side of the National Assembly, this matter has already been brought to the relevant committee to look at it. And there has been agreement that the portfolio committees might need to engage with one another because some of those legislation may have certain elements that are still relevant to our legal framework today, even though the entirety of the law may not be. So in the National Assembly, this matter is being addressed through the various committees. The political party funding, it comes from the 6th administration where the matter was taken to court with regards to the decision that was made by both houses and the mandate that was given to the president, where one of the NGOs, Democracy Under Law, if I'm right, actually felt that there should have been a limit to say how much should be the outer figure rather than saying the president will just decide. So this matter has been referred to the Committee on Home Affairs to actually look at, and I'm sure it will be presented on both houses once the committee has finished with it. On the restoration of Parliament buildings, that's work in progress. I'm sure, as seen in your presentation, that you have set out a date on Friday to actually look at this matter in detail, but it's work in progress. Again, the refocusing the Speakers Forum and its function, I want to indicate to the meeting that this matter already, we've had our first Speakers Forum, we've re-looked at what has been the functions of the Speakers Forum and how this can really be refocused so that it retains its responsibility of coordination and maybe move away from some of the issues that they might have started to deliberate on. The issue of permit, I'm sorry, it's not reflected there. It's one of those legacy issues actually from the 5th Parliament. It's a matter that, again, has not really been resolved because the core issue has been the cost of the medical aid, particularly for serving members. And there was a view that was expressed in the 5th administration and continued on the 6th administration that we need to look at two options. One, of repealing the law so that it's not mandatory when a member comes into Parliament that by virtue of you being a member, you must be automatically a member of Parliament. The second proposal that was made in subsequent meetings, some of which came from the chief whips, fora, and others were discussed in the board itself, was maybe to broaden the scheme to allow for magistrates and traditional leaders and all of those who are public office bearers to form part of the scheme. This matter was also raised with the commission that is responsible for remuneration of public office bearers. And in the report that they presented both to the Speaker and NCOP Chair, they indicated the challenge that the magistracy has because they felt they will not be able to afford the cost of the fund. Similarly, the traditional leaders. But also, the third option, I'm sorry I said two, but there were three other options in the 5th administration, that maybe the scheme must have various categories and be merged with GEMS, which is a scheme that is responsible for civil servant. That matter was not actually resolved because what the legal advice that the board in the 5th administration had received was that if there has to be any change of any kind to the scheme, all members, including those who are continuing members, will have to be consulted individually to get their views on what they would want, in terms of the proposals that were on the table. And I think that's where the board hit a snag of not being able to proceed that work. But I wouldn't want to go further on that one, but just to say it's a matter, Deputy Speaker is responsible for that work in terms of delegated responsibility that the board is seized with. Co-chairpersons and members, I want to just take you through on how we have moved since we started after the 7th Parliament was constituted. I think in starting, it's important for us to say that the impact of the two extraordinary events that happened globally and in our own country will continue to be felt by the 7th administration, particularly the banning of our parliament and COVID-19. Though these have affected the efficacy and effectiveness of parliament, I must say that we have been able to manage through technology to ensure that the work of parliament does not get frustrated. However, in the 7th administration, members have strongly felt that a temporal measure needs to be put in place to ensure that the functionality of parliament takes place. That would mean having a place for the plenary of the National Assembly, but also ensuring that there are enough committee rooms for both houses, portfolio committees and select committees to meet. Some work has been done. The dome working with public works has been constructed, and that's where the debate of the president and the would-be budget that was not tabled happened. But the number of committee rooms that we have now, I think while we may say we have gone a bit of way, about 15 of those, the weakness is that not all of them have a broadcasting system. So it does affect one of our values of transparency and openness as Parliament. Also, the new political landscape following the 2024 election has enabled us to relook at our rules on both houses and how we actually ensure that we are alive to those changes that happened as a result of the elections. As you were saying earlier, Chair, that we've got the Deputy Chief Whip of the largest party as opposed to the majority as we would have had before. That now, even though in number, the official opposition is not the one that had largest numbers in terms of the elections, is now the MK party, which was the third in terms of number, but because of the formation of government that included other parties, so certain changes were necessitated, as I say, Chair, that meant amending the rules of the both houses on number of issues. I know with the NCOP that they're also in the process of amending some of their rules to ensure that it covers some of those matters that will address the fuller functionality of the House. As we all know that there are continuous challenges domestically, which does create constraints, but also means, in my view, maybe there's heightened work that as Parliament we have to do in ensuring that when necessary, we actually ensure that the executive respond to those issues that are a challenge in our society, such as unemployment, the cost of living, as well as rising crime and gender-based violence and others. But also there are global shifts, and I'm sure that we've also experienced what some of those shifts have meant. If you look at the 6th administration, I think the impact of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine did impact on the cost of living, because it shot up the fertilizer prices and actually grain prices, which then affected the global value chain. But at the same time, I think the current reconfiguration that is happening in the EU as well as in the US has also brought other dynamics, particularly when it comes to issues of trade. And I'm sure our various committees and as part of our international diplomacy will continue to engage with some of that work. I just want to indicate, Chair, on the next slide, we were just looking at the realities of the transition from the 6th to 7th Parliament without going more detail, but it's very interesting if we combine both houses. Out of the total number of members that we have, we're 54% of members that are new in Parliament, which in my view and the view of the chairperson, we've agreed that we will have to continue with ongoing training, not because they are new people, because I think even the old will have to also adjust on the new realities. I think the NCOP have been doing that very well, having an annual training in the beginning of the year, and I think as the National Assembly, there's something that we can learn from the NCOP in that regard. We also look at the average age of members. Very interestingly, though we have got young members, but the average age is 51. No. I would actually say those that came younger then in the 5th administration have evolved to join the older one. So the question maybe we might have to ask ourselves is how to ensure that in our various political parties, we become deliberate about infusing young people, women, as well as people with disabilities. The other issue relates to the number of chairpersons that have been, appointed since we started. We have had engagements with the chairs, and they've said they would want increased engagement, particularly training, also not just of themselves as chairpersons, but also of their members, even on sector-specific. I know last year we tried to provide for the sector-specific training, but it didn't go as well because either the issue of the accommodation meant other committees could not do their work as they would have wanted to. It is important for us to note, Chair, that from the 6th Parliament to now, as a result of the new configuration of government, we've got 4 additional committees, portfolio committees, which indeed will increase the resources, both human and financial. The next slide rather, looks at the parliamentary priorities and planned outcomes and impact. We have had both houses since October last year going for a strategic planning session to look at what should be our priorities of the 7th administration, and in terms of the timelines that was finally tabled, and I think the various houses will be engaging with those and make their final determination. But from where the administration sits, we look at how we can strengthen oversight mechanism of Parliament and how we can enhance legislative process and public involvement and improve appointments and international engagement. Chairperson, one of the things we have reflected upon in engaging with the various portfolio committee chairs and select committee chairs is about the funding model to enhance their work. That at the moment you have got a ballpark figure of the budget that is under core business. So at times when the committees plan for their annual work, they plan without really knowing what is the figure for each committee to do their work. And acknowledging that the work of the various committees may not necessarily be the same, we then end up sometimes committees not being able to do the oversight work that they would like to do because they are then informed that there are no resources. So what we have agreed with the chairperson and the executive team is that in the way we budget going forward, we will need to be very clear about how much each committee is budgeted for, at least for a year, so that they can have better planning in terms of the work that they are doing. We think these 3 areas are important to ensure that the outcomes we get are that improve our effectiveness, and that the work that we do in terms of lawmaking is impactful. And I must say, Chairperson, here that if you look at some of the comments that have been made by our courts, relates to how we have actually engaged and ensure people participation in the processes of lawmaking, but also being able to ensure that there's proper recording of the work that we do when we go on oversight and if we engage communities, but also to see whether the legislation that we pass, is it really having any impact or we just pass it? So what it means is that we have, as Parliament, need to be more rigorous in looking at the legislation, either that come from the executive or that might be private members' bill, to see to what extent is this legislation going to have an impact in our, on our people, rather. We also believe that if we do our work well, we'll be able to ensure that we are responsive and we hold executive to account as we must, and that we afford meaningful and adequate participation, so that our value of ensuring that we engage our people in the processes of Parliament, particularly on lawmaking, we have meaningful time to be able to do that. That would actually affect our programming work. The past 7 months, we tried in the latter part of last year to actually allow for more time for constituency, because we believe that enables members to spend more time in engaging with our people and resolving their problems or challenges. And I do think that as the 2 houses, we have indicated that it will be important that in looking at the program of Parliament, we do really afford enough time for constituency. But also, how do we ensure that our constituency offices are not just the 4 walls and the desks? So, resources permitting, we have had an engagement of really making sure that our offices are effective, they are properly supported in terms of technology, so that even if a member is here, if you have a TV screen or whatever that is interoperable, you can still be in Parliament and you can engage your constituency from where you are. So it's some of those issues that we are looking at, and once we have a clear proposal of what is possible in the first or second year, we'll be able to communicate with the committee, because we do believe that as Parliament, we really have to take those offices as the extension of Parliament. I know that, yes, as members of different parties, these may be our offices, but more than the tag of a party, that office must enable every member of society to be able to get services, which therefore means the way as Parliament we see those offices and how we support them becomes important. On the next slide, Chair, we just indicate some of the work that we have been able to do, the number of legislation that we are dealing with that have been referred to us, and also how we have conducted our international relations work and diplomacy, and that this year we'll be hosting our P20. But in the next slide, we actually try to indicate how many oral questions per various quarters we have as the 2 houses. On the 2nd and the 3rd quarter, we were able to have from members, and how many of those were responded to, as well as written questions and the number of responses that we received from the executive. These are some of the matters, in my view, that we continuously, as the two executive authorities in engaging with the leader of government business, try to really make sure that we improve on it. If you look, for instance, on the last line, on the response rate, Q2 in the National Assembly, we had 33.81%. We improved in Q3, particularly on written questions, to 81.22%. And similarly, if you look at the NCOP, Q2, 57.27% and 96.27%. These are areas in which we think we will have to continuously engage to make sure that we keep the executive to account in terms of their responsibilities. We also indicate the committee's activities, the work that has been done by both houses in terms of the oversight visits and quarterly reports and meetings that have been held by the two houses. The next slide relates to the budget allocation. That for the 24-25 budget, you will see that the full envelope was 4.74961 billion. And 29% of that goes to the support of MPs as well as the compensation thereof. And 29% goes to core business of Parliament, and then rather 42% goes to our core business and 29% goes to the rebuilding of Parliament. In terms of issues that you also raised, Chair, about human capital, we just indicate there how the number of employees as at 20 February we have had, and what is the low turnover rate, which is less than 2%, and the continuing ongoing capacity building interventions to strengthen our human resource capability as well as the capacity of the institution. And this is important, Chair, because these are members that support you to do your work in terms of the various committees. We've also ensured that in terms of our labor relations, we continue a healthy engagement with our labor. On the other one is the overall Parliament performance on Q1 to Q3, and the STP will actually deal with the detail there, but we just indicate how on some of those matters we have actually performed. And the repairs and upgrades to the National Assembly, I know, Chairperson, this matter will be dealing with on Friday in terms of the detail to also answer the questions that you have raised about what in the sixth administration might have been a motivation for going and implementing agency route as opposed to public works, and how those decisions were taken, and what are the methodologies to ensure that there is monitoring to make sure that the work continues and we meet the deadline that had been envisaged. Well, Chair, there's an issue which continues to be a challenge. Well, the budget will always be a challenge. The office space, I know I'm sitting with members here who have written to me also raising that they would still need 2 office space. It's a matter that we're attending to because, as you know, that we lost a lot of office space during the fire. And the perennial issue of parking, which we are continuing to look at how we address it. I want to indicate to members that with regards to the funding model, we've had at least one engagement with the Minister of Finance. We've agreed that we're going to continue to look at how Parliament is properly funded in order for it to do its work. Chair, this is the overall overview from myself and the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. I table for your consideration. Thank you.
Speaker, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the comprehensive presentation. You know, I thought you were going to make remarks. So you made a presentation that preempted most of the items that are going to be presented here. We want to thank you so much for that. We must welcome honorable members Maute and Kesha, who have arrived when the meeting is in session. Thank you so much for coming. We are going to open up to honorable members to interact with the presentation, the overview that has been made here by the speaker. Can I note hands of honorable members who want to speak? Because once the list is closed, it will only open tomorrow. Yes, I work like an assignment submission link. Okay, Honorable Denier, Honorable Badenhorst. Yes, I noted both of you there. Is your hand up? Is your name Cameron or Dagmo? Honorable Feni, you are noted. Honorable Nilmei. All of you. Okay, yeah. So all honorable members are going to speak, and we will start in alphabetic order with the name of Honorable Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad you remembered my name. I thought you'd forgotten it. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the presentation. I would just like to ask a few questions. And in this presentation, we discussed that our core functions as Member of Parliament is writing legislation, oversight, and public participation in the main. And my experience, and I don't know if other members have had this experience, but I serve on the Health Committee, and Member Frolic has always declined our oversights in many instances when we've applied. So I really think that that is an issue that needs to be looked at, that there's enough budget for us to actually go and do our oversights. I mean, our hospitals really need visiting, and we need to table reports in order to upgrade our health facilities. So in my experience, that is an issue, and I think there are some other committees that, when we caucus, have the same problem. So if that could really be taken up, because that is our main core function. Then, in terms of PARMED, I've belonged to PARMED for a very long time, so I qualify for the top up when I retire, and the percentage that we get paid. So I'm very glad to hear that the board is going to speak to each and every member on their own merits. Because someone like me that's been around for a long time, I would like to remain on PARMED because it's beneficial to me to do that, because I've paid into that scheme for a very long time. Then in terms of the committees that are now going to be sitting in person, because I experience that we still do a lot of virtual meetings, and I don't think it's ideal in terms of accountability. I think when you are face-to-face in meetings, you get a lot more done because you can actually read the meeting and get a feel of the discussions that are going on when you're meeting in person. Then, in terms of the budget and the expenditure in terms of the burning of Parliament, I note that only 10% of the budget has been spent out of the 1.3 billion, if I'm correct. And I would like to know the contractor that was appointed, if he was put on terms in terms of how long this project would take, and if there are penalty clauses within that contract. Because normally, when you embark on a big project like that, there should be penalty clauses if you're not being able to make the time frames of that contract. And I do request that a full report come to this committee in terms of the status quo of that issue. And then also linking into that is the investigation, and if we could request that report to come to this committee as well, it would give us a lot more insight in terms of the issue and what actually happened. Then I just want to get clarity in terms of the constituency officers that was mentioned in the presentation, because I'm not aware that any of us have constituency officers. So what is the criteria and the thinking around the constituency officers? I mean, we have our own working spaces in our constituencies, but it's not provided to us by Parliament. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's my first time here. I'm very excited to be here. Looks like a lovely bunch of people. So let's see how it goes. And it's amazing how you often, when you sit next to somebody that's a colleague, you often think the same thing. So just to expand on what my colleague asked about the core function of Parliament, I think it'd be useful to know at the moment if our core function is oversight and legislation, which obviously includes public participation. How much of the operational budget at the moment in Parliament is actually spent on our core function? It'll be useful to maybe interrogate to see that as a figure, percentage-wise. With regards to the Parliament burning the National Assembly, I've noticed that we have sometimes parliamentary protection services, because when you watch TV and some of our colleagues get a little bit unruly, you see these guys in white shirts jumping on the stage and doing work as security. So they are the parliamentary protection services. But as a member of Parliament, I don't ever see them on the campus. I see police. So I wonder if what is the members of the parliamentary protection services doing on a day-to-day basis if there's no plenaries and they have to be on standby to chase people off the stage? What are they doing in between? Where are they? And why are they not doing the job that the police is doing at the moment? Surely they should be protecting the windows and doors and entrances instead of SAPs. Maybe we could use SAPs on a more productive way on the Cape Flats, protecting people there. And what does it cost us to have SAPs protecting us versus paying for parliamentary protection services and maybe have them protecting Parliament? Which brings me to the employees. I think we mentioned that we have 1,195 employees in Parliament. How many of them are actually working in Parliament and how many of them are working from home? I'm a committee chair and 3 of my staff are not available to me on a day-to-day basis. They work from home. So if I want something done, for example, printing, sorry, I can't help you, Chair, because I work from home. You have to go and get printing done by your political party if you want printing done for a committee meeting. The reality of the matter is, as a committee chair, I don't have a printer. So at the moment, I'm using my party political printing office, abusing it for printing. But it brings me down to where's the support of our members of Parliament if they are working from home and they're not on the precinct. And I understand there might be a shortage of office space, but there is space available in some of the buildings. And then with regards to the restoration of Parliament, and like my colleague mentioned, there must be accountability for the contractor and also the subcontractors. So surely we have to have a certain amount of say on when the contractor subcontracts and the subcontractor doesn't do their work properly. Are we holding the contractor responsible for what the subcontractor does or doesn't do? And what are the parameters of appointing those subcontractors? What are the actual reasons for the delay? We can also then ask. And then I noticed that Treasury has made 2 billion rand available for the restoration of the National Assembly, and our presentation only refers to 1.3 billion, so there's a shortfall of 700 million, somewhere in there. What is the reason for that? And then my comment on that would be, I think we have one go at it to rebuild the National Assembly. We should do the best possible job we can to rebuild the National Assembly, because I don't think going forward lots of other money is going to be made available for any capital investment in the National Assembly. So let's make the use of it while we have. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairs. Chair, I'm aware that we're having a presentation immediately after this one by the Secretary, and that during the week we're going to be having a whole lot of presentations as well. But with that in mind, I just wanted to make a few comments in terms of the Speaker's presentation. I think in terms of the outcomes that the Speaker has mentioned in her priorities, I think all of those outcomes are ones that need our full support. But I think as we go along, it's going to be important, I think, for us as an oversight committee to have a look at exactly what resources are committed to achieving those particular outcomes. I do have a concern that in terms of what's described as meaningful and adequate participation of the public, I think until we have an idea about what is actually being spent on parliamentary communications, how that could be enhanced, how public participation, it would be difficult. So I'm just signaling support for all those outcomes. But as we go along, I think it's important that we get a sense of what's spent. I find it quite linked to that. The colleague who spoke first, Ms. Honourable Clark, mentioned something about a health committee wanting to do oversight, and apparently being told by the chair of chairs that there's not a budget. So possibly in the response or as we go along, it would be quite useful. My experience in the legislature in the Western Cape was that committee chairs were responsible for a certain budget per committee. So they knew that within that budget, if they were going to go and do an oversight visit to the Southern Cape or whatever, they would have to budget for that. So I don't know if it doesn't work like that in Parliament, but I just maybe like to know, do committees actually get an allocation, and then the committee itself can decide? I didn't realize that there had to be permission for every oversight visit from the chair of chairs. So it would be useful to get clarity on that. And what is the actual budget available for committees? Because in terms of those outcomes, meaningful and adequate participation, and the Speaker mentions in the beginning how, through the programming meeting that the Speaker chairs, there's been set-asides of particular weeks for, like we are now, committee and oversight, and so on and so forth. But, if you can't fund those oversights, I'm aware this week, for instance, there's 16 committees that are actually on oversight, and there are 20 committees that are having meetings around Parliament and the NCOP. So budgets are required for that. And then I just wanted to ask just a question. We're restoring Parliament, and I think many of us are not fussy at all when it comes to accommodation. I think the 3 parliamentary villages are an important part of Parliament's life, because that's where our members are staying, they're transported to come and participate and so on. But in this budget, does the budget for improving or upgrading parliamentary villages come from the budget that's referred to in the Speaker's presentation, or is that a budget somewhere else? I'd be interested around that. And then just, there's reference to the values and professionalism and so on. just in terms of an experience as a member and responsiveness from our parliamentary staff, I was just wondering if, for instance, when, is there a standard protocol so that when members of parliament request support from ICT, or when they submit a claim, or when they do this or that, is there like a protocol or a standard in terms of Parliament meeting those requests? Like, is it a 2-week turnaround time for a request for a reimbursement, or is there, do we have issues like that which assist in the accountability and support that members get from our parliamentary staff? And then my last question, the audit committee that the Speaker refers to, which is appointed by the Executive Authority, could we just get a list of who is that audit committee, the one that is appointed by the Secretary to Parliament? Thanks.
Honorable Fene.
Thanks, Chair. Let me also welcome the presentation. Indeed, that is assisting us as members also in terms of understanding of critically of our role as legislators at this level. And also, Chair, I must also welcome and appreciate, because the consistent briefing in terms of the developments with regard to the rebuilding, reconstruction, because this information has not been disappearing. Each and every platform that we are getting, at least we do have highlights of the frustrations, not waiting up until to such a stage where there is chaos. And then that's when we are getting information. And also on the question of the budgetary constraints that you are experiencing due to an unplanned, crisis, especially after your COVID-19, because you see, because if you look in terms of the budget that we are having, that we might currently have, that we are expected to utilize in other services, then you will have to rechannel the budget in order to meet, what is a need in front of us. So I appreciate that because it is also more educational in terms of understanding the operations. There is no money that is sitting there waiting to be coupled with that, Chair, because I also want to check in terms of when this damage was made, because it's very important that we must also. I believe that there are issues that can still be utilized. I know it might come to the report as correctly raised, but I might not be around, so pardon me, Chair, for abusing your co-chairs, the platform, because the tomorrow and then the other day, Friday, I won't be around in terms of engaging what might be presented. So some other items that might have been, saved or whatever in ensuring that in the budget that is expected, can't we on the rubble as we are moving forward? Because I believe in the process of rebuilding, you might find some of the necessities that you might identify, so that the contractor does not take advantage of what is there, So I just wanted Chair to check that, and also, Chair, there is what is your attitude when it comes to issue of legislative process versus the court judgments? Remember, our role as legislators, we don't necessarily need the court to instruct us to take a particular decision when it comes to legislative processes. But there is this issue that is on the public domain, that in our parliamentary role now has been taken over by court, where our responsibilities, mandatory political responsibility, are being enforced for us to take decisions. I won't make mention of legislation or act, but there are plethora of those, Chair. Just wanted to check the attitude or perspective or view with regard to that one. Also, Chair, you see, this thing of permit, we will have, mixed and different experiences, of which I believe that they are assisting in terms of coming up with an approach, because a transformative parliament, when it comes to situation of this magnitude, I don't think that we are stuck. I think it's correct to say that there are these scenarios that are being brought to us. What is important is to look as to what becomes a best practice. So I will encourage that process rather than to lament or be complacent on the process. Just the process is to be a little bit sped up, so that come the end of the term of the 7th Parliament, we do not experience, or new members do not experience a similar situation on this particular process. And also, Chair, the question of venues, it's a serious challenge. Understanding that COVID-19 have made us to be more creative and dynamic in terms of how do we approach certain issues, but it does have an element of destabilizing somehow in terms of how do we approach our work, because certain functions are not necessarily, performed as expected due to the question of absence of certain support that we might necessarily need, even though there are certain rules that were made for such, Chair. Also on this one, because I know that in as much as we might want to see things happening at a normal stage, but there are indeed challenges. I just want to confirm, or just to comment on it. And also the emphasis on the question of I must appreciate also the allocation of time for constituency work, because that's where we are needed. But it must not just the allocation of time, but the resources indeed. Resources in different forms, your human resource, because in response to some of the challenges that our constituencies are faced with, you need this resource mobilization in order to respond to those. So I want to encourage, Chair, that we put at least some form of packaging to ensure that at least it becomes an effective and efficient this time allocation, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I just have 4 questions, and basically 1 or 2 are comments. I like the idea of having some more time to spend in the constituency. I think it's very important that we engage with people, and at the same time finding ways that we can interact with constituency officers through the TV screen, and making your constituency office like a parliamentary precinct. I'm busy trying to do that as a model now, just to see, so that one can encourage people to come into the office, and at the same time taking Parliament to the people. I think that is very important that we need to do. The other area that I wanted to speak on is the parliamentary rebuild. I think we need to do it right. That is your national pride. Your parliamentary buildings in any country is of national pride, irrespective of what political party you are. So if we can monitor, evaluate, but do it right, it must be done in a manner that generations will look back and say, look at this. This is South Africa's parliament, and this is what it means to the nation. The third question that I wanted to speak about is I still think that having hybrid and virtual meetings is important, and it is part of how the world is moving. You still need that contact, we still need face-to-face, but at the same time, we are moving into an electronic sort of dimension. So I think balance is very important, but we still need to make sure that hybrid or virtual meetings are still part of it. It is also part of cost containment, because if you think that if every single meeting is face-to-face, the costs go up, but at the same time, we can prioritize which meetings are important for face-to-face. Thirdly, the last question that I have is on the budget. Who is responsible for cutting Parliament's budget if legislation requires Parliament to approve its own budget? So does the underfunding of Parliament not limit its ability to fulfill its constitutional responsibilities? And I think that is very important that we look at that and we make sure that Parliament is able to fulfill its constitutional responsibilities with a properly crafted budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to yourselves on the front desk, and then my colleagues this side, and Speaker and her office. Speaker, let me start by welcoming your presentation. It's such a well-crafted and well presented, by the way. Yeah, there's a difference between having a good presentation and the presenter herself. So you did very well, Speaker. Speaker, on your second slide, if not third, you correctly mentioned that one of the mandate of Parliament is passing legislation. But our experience, Speaker, is that majority of the time, the bills that come to committees and get expedited are the ones from the executive. And every time we ask, we're told about the inefficiencies in the legal office, structuring, staffing, and such like that. So we need to really prioritize beefing up the legal office to ensure that they are able to function and do what they need to do, because all members of Parliament should be able to bring, any member of Parliament should be able to bring a private member's bill that gets processed. It doesn't matter where it ends up, whether it ends up not being approved by Parliament or what, but it has to go through the process. We've got experience of a lot of our private member bills that did not go any further. Some stems from as far as fifth Parliament. If you remember, Speaker, the nationalization of the Reserve Bank is one of them, as an example. So I think we need to beef up the legal office. On the Political Party Funding Act, Speaker, and it's in line with what my colleague said, that we see people who are not member of Parliament forcing Parliament to develop laws for the country. And I mean, we won't shy away from that fact that it's actually NGOs who are pushing. I mean, this Political Party Funding Act came to Parliament because of a ruling of a court that was brought there by an NGO. Again, the NGO has taken it to court to say, remove the threshold of 100,000, and the president cannot be the one who decides. There must be a threshold lower than the 15 million, as you mentioned, Speaker. So we see that happening quite a lot. How are we going to arm ourselves as Parliament to ensure that we are not being taken out of our mandate, and we don't bring elements in the country, because who funds these NGOs, and what motive forces are behind all this? Which direction do they want to take us to? You know, so those are the questions that, as members of parliament, as the authority, Speaker, we need to ask ourselves. And how do we navigate being used to create the laws? And maybe we should also, you know, create laws for these NGOs, because they are a free, you know, they've got a free right born in the country, and yet they dictate what we need to do. Speaker, on the matters that stems from the 6th Parliament, I don't know who decides that this matter carries on. And I'm saying this because, Speaker, in as much as we welcome the reconstruction of Parliament, there's a relocation of Parliament matter that, if I remember quite well, it was never finalized. So perhaps it should also find expression in the 7th administration, and then we deal with it. The last time I checked, the study was done, and from there I can't remember what process did it take, where it ended up to, but I do know that the study, feasibility study was done on that, so perhaps we can look at that. Another matter, Speaker, is the, and my colleague Dagmore spoke about it, the parliamentary villages. I remember there was a talk about, instead of members of parliament staying in the parliamentary villages, how about a housing allowance, and members of parliament chooses where they stay. I do know that we need to maintain respect and discipline and, you know, dignity of parliament, but do we find dignity in those houses, box houses? I don't know, Speaker. So what happened to that issue of the housing allowance? Speaker, on the meeting rooms, so we went to Denmark, I think it was 2021 or 2022. They had a similar issue of banning of parliament. Actually, it was the second time that the parliament banned. And they said to us, it took them more than 10 years to restore it. So I don't know how far we are, and then my colleague, they asked, but it means that we are still going to have this challenge of meeting rooms, which makes it difficult for Parliament. I mean, we see some committees being forced now to go to hotels, which is far much more expensive. Can't we look at other offices that we can utilize? Your legislature, Speaker, has got the 3 spheres. It's local, provincial, and you are national. Surely the provincial legislature, perhaps, they have meeting rooms that can be looked into. If not, then Cape Metro municipality, because all of that is government, it's us. And perhaps we can, instead of utilizing the hotels, maybe let's look at, because they're all here. I don't think provincial legislature is far from Parliament. I think it's just 4 minutes walking distance, if you are fit like me. And then, Speaker, one of your slides, you spoke about, I think it's a slide after this one, the impact of raising quality of life in our citizens, the speedy service delivery to our people. How do we measure that? How do we, this one, yes. So how do we measure the workings of Parliament actually filtering down to our people? And I'm saying this, Speaker, because there was a survey that was done that gave us all a shock of our lives, that people actually don't take us serious. I think it was 11-12% of the people that were actually taking Parliament serious. So how do we make sure that our people change their attitude to this democracy that was fought for so hard, that we don't end up losing it? And then we see our work actually indeed raising quality of life to our citizens, speeding up service delivery by government. The last one, Chair, on the issue of questions. Besides escalating to the leader of government business, what else can we do? Because we've seen that we write letters to you, you reprimand, you involve the leader of Minister of Police will just not answer questions. And then those questions, oral, written questions become oral, and then he leaves the session in between and just leave the house, and nothing happens. Is that how we want to hold them accountable? Is that how we want our leaders really to behave? So we need to have a mechanism of forcing the executive really to respond to our questions, because these are the questions that are coming from our constituencies. So if we want to bring parliament to the people, that's one of the ways of bringing parliament to the people, because when I go back home, I report back to say, hey, your issue was raised in parliament and this is the response. So they feel somehow that they are indeed represented, and perhaps they will change their attitude of not taking parliament serious. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, co-chairpersons. Good afternoon, Honorable Speaker, colleagues, and the officials in this meeting. Let me join my colleagues in thanking the Speaker for your overview presentation. We really appreciate that. And also, in some instances, the progress that has been made so far. If I can start with the Honorable Clerk. Oh, yeah, boy. So, we really appreciate the progress that is being made, has been made so far, and also to say, Honorable Speaker, with regard to the reports that you have highlighted in your overview, the Karasmal, the Halima, the Judge Zondo, and also the Public Protector's recommendations, we really want to see some improvement from Parliament and also our committees on how we deal with these matters. And we want Parliament to take decisions with regard to these matters, because they are thorns on our necks. The people out there want to see what Parliament is doing with this. We know some of them have been implemented, but not all of them. Then on the issue of permit, while some of us are benefiting a lot, I mean those who have retired and those who have invested in this permit for years, like Honorable Clerk was saying, but let's not close the door because of that. Let's allow for more options for members of Parliament, because it's really unfair to be forced to belong to one medical aid, which is very expensive, very, very expensive for members of Parliament. People out there think that we earn a lot, but in reality, it's not like that. And as members of Parliament, our kids, we pay for everything for our kids. They don't benefit from NSFAS or anything, unless if your child gets the bursary on their own. So I think more options, we need more options on permit. People must have that opportunity to choose whether they want to join permit or not. I think that will be fair for all of us. And also to say that, Honorable Speaker, we've been with this matter of Parliament since 2014, if I may say so. Tried many options. This thing of the board saying that they will have to engage members, even the retired, even everyone, they are not going to agree. Because as members, current members of Parliament, we subsidize those who have retired. So I don't think they will agree to repealing or also to to having many options. So I think we need to do something different about this matter of permit. Then on the issue of what other honorable members are raising about the construction, contractors, subcontractors, I think we should wait for that presentation to be made to us in full. Then we can engage on it, on the refurbishment of Parliament. So if we can wait for that presentation to be made, that will assist us. Then on the issue of making time for the program to allow members to do more work on their constituencies, I think that is what we've been trying to do all along, and is what we must do to make sure that people on the ground understand the role of members of Parliament and also understand how Parliament works and the legislations that we pass as to how they will assist them and also change their lives for the better. Then constituency officers is a responsibility of political parties. Yes, because from the budget that political parties represented in Parliament gets from Parliament, there is that constituency fund that is directed to, that is given to parties. So it is the responsibility of a party to have their own constituent officers. So that's how it works. Then with regards to the political party funding, I think as South Africans, we all, or members of Parliament, we know that these NGOs carry the interests of those who fund them. So I think we should be more patriotic to our country as members of Parliament and leave this party politics aside, so that when we deal with some of the matters, we must have the interest of our country at heart. Sometimes we shouldn't allow these external forces to push us into doing something that at the end of the day will harm us or put us in a corner that it will be difficult for us to come out. So we must love our country and be patriotic as South Africans. We shouldn't behave as if we have other countries where we can run to as South Africans. Some of us, we don't have. We have only one citizenship. We don't have dual citizenships. So I think it will be better for us to do that. Then for Parliament to be able to achieve the goals that you have set for yourself, can I be protected, honorable chairperson? Because I'm like a...
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing, Deputy Chief Whip.
These two?
Yes.
I don't know whether
can they be orderly,
spies,
please?
They are spies or they belong to the NGOs. I don't know. So, Honorable Chair, I was saying that for Parliament to be able to achieve the goals that they have set for themselves, I think let's first make sure that we stabilize Parliament, meaning that we should do away with the acting positions. For any organization to be stable, we really need to have permanent people in permanent positions, not acting, because that will delay some of the issues, because those acting will not be able to take decisions that will assist Parliament to achieve what they have the goals that they have set themselves to achieve. So I just want to, as members sitting in this committee, to be realistic with what we are faced with. Before our parliament went up in smoke, we had many committee rooms. I don't remember us maybe having meetings outside Parliament. But the situation that we are faced with right now is that our Parliament went out in smoke. We don't have many committee rooms. For us to save the little budget that we have as Parliament, I think we have adopted the rules for virtual and hybrid sittings and committee meetings. We have adopted that as part of our rules. If we are not, or committees are not dealing with sensitive matters that warrant them to be in a physical meetings, I think we can, for now, while Public Works is also trying to build that dome so that we can have other committee rooms in that dome. I think let's make use of our rules to have virtual and hybrid committee meetings and sittings. Thank you, Honorable Chairpersons.
That's yours. Why do you like privatization?
Dysfunctional.
No, thank you, Honorable Co-Chairperson. Good afternoon, everyone in the room here. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the Speaker for being appointed a Speaker. This is the first time she's here in this oversight mechanism of Parliament. Congratulations, to all of the best. Number two, Chairperson, I think that we have legacy issues which we have to deal with as this seventh-term administration, in particular of Parliament. And then when going to that one, I like that slide number 11, which is there. I agree, slide number 11, they remove it. Who's working for? Who's this yeah. Slide number 11. Really, I think that if we can achieve that, South Africa will be a better place to live in. But it can only happen if the Parliament is well resourced to do this. I'll make a very simple example. At the apex of this slide is that on the impact side is that we raise the quality of life of the citizens. Here are the people who made a joke last month that there's genocide in South Africa. And then with that simple statement, there's a probability South Africa is going to suffer seriously when coming to financial matters, in particular coming to trade. But this Parliament has not called anyone to come and account for that. I think that if Parliament is the epicenter of any democracy, the Parliament should have called those people a long time ago so that she could come here and account why did they do that. And this issue, again, will go to the issue which was raised by Honorable Mautu, is that the issue of the NGOs, also the issue of the key legacy issues which are arising, the issue of the regulation of NGOs. It cannot be right that we can have a country where anyone can do anything at any time. No, I think it's high time that we put a rein. It's not that we are against the NGOs. The NGOs are playing a very critical role, but they must be regulated. They must be regulated. I'll make a simple example. In one country, I'm not going to mention it by name, immediately if an NGO is founded outside of that country, it is declared a foreign agent, so that whoever it is going to interact with that NGO must know that that NGO is serving the interest of the people outside that country. I think those are the realities which we have to face as South Africa so that we can defend ourselves as we move forward. But on the legacy issues, Chair, I think the issue of the budget of Parliament, as I said that, if we're going to have impactful lawmaking, the lawmaking can only be impactful if there's proper public participation. If there's not enough funds for proper public participation, it means that the courts are going to dictate to Parliament what it must do. Because whatever most of the bills which are going to pass, the court will find it very easy. Actually, the very same NGOs will take them to court. The court will strike them down. I like what on the key legacy issues that Parliament is already preparing that they need to incorporate court directives. They have to incorporate that court. It means that the other arm of state is basically dictating what the other arm of state is supposed to be doing. So part of defending the legacy of this Parliament is that these committees must be well-resourced so that they are able to do their job properly. When we speak about public participation, if there's a bill here which is being passed, we must ensure that when we say that it goes all Section 76, it goes to all the provinces, the Parliament must have the ability to track and ensure that the people who participated in that process were really valid so that when it goes to court, it can be defended. So that's why I'll appeal to the executive authority that the relationship which was established in the 6th Parliament between the executive authority and the treasurer, that the issue of the re-looking at the budget of Parliament, it must be done as of yesterday. Because when you look at that 4 billion, it looks nice, but when you go deep into it, you find that the Parliament is in trouble. It cannot do what it's supposed to do. So I really appeal to the brand new executive authority that it enhance the issue of budgeting of Parliament. Because if we can do that, we can do better. On the issue of parliamentary diplomacy, I request that the program of the P20, which will be done by Parliament, let us have a presentation here on the side of the executive authority. What is the Parliament intending to do? We don't want surprises towards the end. When the G20 is going to meet here, we find that there are certain things which we're lagging behind. If we can get an earlier appraisal on the side, what is the Parliament going to do to ensure that we involve our communities, we involve our sister parliaments from the side of the continent so that it becomes an African thing, as the President has articulated that this G20 is going to involve everyone. And then again, Siyabonga, new executive authority, all of the best.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. I echo the sentiments of Honorable my Commissar Umphile Maudwe here when he speaks about the issues pertaining to the NGOs. You know, they're of the illusion, Speaker, that they are representing the public, and therefore they are representing a certain sector that they come from, and then therefore they are raising issues that might have been not raised in terms of what they believe in. But if you go to a report by a whistleblower here, I forgot his name, is Mike Hampton. That whistleblower is the most ostracized whistleblower here in the Western Cape. He talks about how those NGOs are funded, and he makes a breakdown of who funds those NGOs. And you can see clearly that what are their interests? Are their interests neoliberal, or are their interests progressive in the manner in which they want to maintain the status quo, as it were? You will see, it will speak to you, that report of Mike Hampton, and you will know how the MECs of local government here are after him in terms of the your newspapers, you know, everything else that is a propaganda against one man, because he's blowing the whistle against injustice in the Western Cape. And therefore, because the state in the Western Cape actually controls the media and controls everybody who is an NGO, therefore, it drives a certain narrative and therefore wants to influence what the national government must do.
Sorry, Chair.
Not may do.
Sorry, Chair.
The second thing,
I want to raise a point of order, Chair, here. We were all given an opportunity to speak. No one reacted in terms of what we were raising. I want co-chairs to protect the speaker when he's sharing his views around the question of NGOs, because I don't understand what is the laughing matter when someone is sharing a view. No, I'm not addressing you, Chief. I'm not addressing you, I'm addressing Chair. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Respect other members in the committee. No, respect other members in the committee, please. This is the problem that we're encouraging here.
Honorable members. Honorable members.
We're going to beat each other up physically.
Honorable Kaisha. Honorable Kaisha. You know the reason why we address each other as honorable members is because we always presume that all of us understand that we don't represent ourselves here. We act in the name of the Republic, and we represent the people of South Africa. And that is why the title Honorable was generously attached to members of Parliament, the highest institution, the highest locus of power in the country. Whoever decided to address members of Parliament as honorable members was under the presumption that every person who happens to be a member of Parliament, it will not arise that on any other day eludes the consciousness of acting at this level. This meeting is commencing very well, and we will not like to have anything in this meeting that will potentially upset the proceedings. Can you continue, Honorable Kaisha?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. So I am raising these issues, Speaker, so that you reign on these issues, if you have powers to reign on the issues that I'm raising, that we are raising as the EFF. Then I want to raise the issue relating to members of Parliament that are registered in institutions. What is the turnaround period in regards to the period between when the member has outstanding fees and therefore Parliament has to, and therefore that member has to re-register to continue with study, and then there is a delay between the institution and Parliament in doing so, and therefore delays the member of Parliament to re-register. Because I think that there is a misunderstanding between those institutions, because you often run back and forth trying to mend issues that could have been mended between at the level of the institutions rather than the student itself. Then on oversight visits, Chair, There was a point where we were sitting in the portfolio committee on COGTA. We wanted to go somewhere, Speaker, last year, and then they said we don't have money. What is the course of action, you know? Because, I mean, because our work belongs to the ground. We are sent here by the people. And it does not assist us at all to sit with presentations there that are often painting a great picture. And when you go to the ground, you find out it is the same presentation that they came with in 2024. It's just that they save because they think that we are stupid not to look at the numbers here. So when you go to the ground, you find that that is not the issue. Therefore, it says that there's lots of work that members of parliament has to do on the ground to verify the facts that are, to ascertain the facts that are presented by departments, by entities, by municipalities, and so on and so on and so on. Then the issue of public participation, Speaker. You know, there's 170,000 people that are affected by blindness in South Africa. And therefore, in terms of legislation, I don't know, I've been saying that, I don't know how long do you have to say that in Parliament, how many times do we have to say it, that there is a braille that people need. I don't know how long do we have to say this thing. Maybe you will advise us as to say, I mean, for how many times do we have to know how many people are affected? How many times do we have to say chair in Parliament? And what is the response time? Because when we go back there to those people, we have nothing to say as members of Parliament. And therefore, when they go to public participation, to look at the legislation and critique the legislation, they don't even see themselves there because they are not participating. They just use other means, you know, audio and stuff like that. And then again, Western Cape were here on independent municipal demarcation authorities bill by provincial COGTA. We came there was no one. And this is the expenditure of Parliament that has been done, all those things of political office, public consultation prior the actual, you know, having been done. And then members of Parliament, they come to the Western Cape. It's the only province that does not have people. What do you do there? Because that bill affects, it's a Section 76 bill. It affects the provinces. Do you hold that province liable for having sabotaged the process of Parliament, or you just postpone that and spend again and start afresh? What is the course of action there? And written questions, well, they've said a lot about it. There are no responses. And it is quite ludicrous to think about it, that I can't get anything in terms of response to go back to people on a weekly basis, because we ask those questions on a weekly basis. Shame. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
No, Speaker, thank you so much. And let me thank the honorable members for their participation and contribution. I think what happened here in this meeting, I wish it does not happen again, especially when we are with the speaker is the steward of this institution. And we need to respect that office. The manner in which our democracy is maturing, one day one of you may hold that office in future. And you will expect those that you will be working with to reciprocate. And they may remind you about your previous shenanigans. So I decided to deal with your matter in a very calm way. I could have decided to degenerate to the standard that you wanted us to wallow in. But we felt that it will not help us. South Africans are watching us. And they want us to, every time they want to see the best from us, honorable members. I'm not addressing you individually. I'm addressing you as a collective. Those who are innocent and those who are culprits. So we need to rise to the occasion and never on any day lower the standard. When we are sitting like this, we are Parliament in session. Parliament cannot meet every day. That is why it has committees. So I hope that we will not have to come and reprimand each other again for something like this. Honorable Speaker, just to make an addition to what colleagues have said, we will need to expedite the regulations on the implementation of the Financial Management of Parliament Act, so that we don't call a meeting with yourselves and one committee of Parliament is also under impression that you must appear before them. You don't appear before before portfolio committees. As it stands now, the only committee that you appear before is this committee. But we need a legal framework that provides clarity. And we are not saying that when other committees invite you, you must say, arrogantly say, no, I can't come. You can respond to them and inform them that in terms of the legal framework we have, we appear before the Joint Standing Committee, but we will come and share whatever information you want us to share with you. So those regulations, I think they will help us. And I think in your presentation, when you spoke about the shift that has happened in the aftermath of the 2024 elections, honorable members might have noted that we now have a gap in terms of our law. How do we regulate a situation where we find ourselves, the coalition situation? Apart from the minor adjustments that have been made in the rules and elsewhere, fundamentally the law of this country has been impacted upon. The situation that we find ourselves in. What happens one day if Parliament decides to behave itself in a particular way? What constitutional implications are there? You can imagine what happened last week when we arrive at the Dome and an announcement is made that the budget is not ready. These are the realities of the situation. We have to go and look at our law. What is it that needs to be done? And if there is a need for a framework, I mean a time frame to say by this time, if there are any interventions necessary in law that we have to do. I mean, we have learned from the COVID-19 situation. Unprecedented human experiences. We navigated through the situation, but we came out of it wiser. Because from those lessons, we knew that the following have to be done. Like now when we come to implement the National Health Insurance Act, you don't expect that some of the lessons that we might have learned from the COVID-19 situation will come and repeat themselves in the implementation of the Act. So we came out wiser in a situation like that. The first coalition parliament or first coalition government has happened in South Africa, what are the implications for South African law? And we need to move with agility, Speaker, and look at anything that has the potential to disable the movement of Parliament going forward. And we correct those aspects, or we improve on them. And I also want to echo the sentiment expressed by honorable members here regarding our core functions. Maybe we will need to find a way how, for instance, when we do, how our oversight program complement public participation, or how the two programs complement each other, because as I remember, we only find ourselves in close interaction with the people when we in lawmaking processes, where we call public hearings. But committees can tell you, I mean, they come to my village to do oversight. The whole village is out on the streets because there is the wailing of sirens. Not a single member of parliament or a single vehicle stops to talk to the villagers. No, the reason why we are here, we just see members of parliament going this side, they're going to the reservoir. From the reservoir, they go this side, they're out of the village. Nobody is asking us, do you know how much has been budgeted for this project? How long has it started? What is the purpose of this project, and what is the schedule? When do we aim to have this project completed? And when you leave, somebody calls on a radio and complains to the program host about a project that has been underway in the village for 5 years. Everybody has come, members of parliament, they were even here yesterday. But the project, so I think but of course it's going to have implications on the funding model. So if we have to incorporate that in the work of, so that parliament is manifestly seen as a representative of the people. If we come to do oversight, there must be an aspect of engagement. Because we can still receive reports like Honorable Kesha is saying here. But that report is not the reality people live on the ground. And we have come here to act in their name, but we haven't spoken to them. The officials of the department have come, they are with us at the project, but there is nobody from the community. And when we have finished our meeting, we leave, all of us. Nobody gives a feedback in the community. We were here because we wanted to see if your services are being provided. There are services of good quality. There are services which will dignify you. If we can look at how we improve on those aspects, Honorable Speaker, I think it's going to be very, very critical. And maybe the last point that I will want to make is the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the funding model for Parliament. And this is going to depend entirely on our attitude as members of Parliament, whether we are in the executive or we are in the legislature. It does not matter. We have to reposition Parliament as the epicenter of South African politics. Parliament as the paragon of democracy in the country. It can only happen if Parliament, in terms of budgetary processes, does not belong to another god. Parliament has to be in the same congregation other arms of the state. But look, if we are going to be treated as if we are a state department, we are not a state department. The executive derives its mandate from Parliament. And when you look at the core functions of Parliament, we don't only exercise oversight on the executive, we also exercise oversight over the judiciary, we exercise oversight over the Chapter 9 institution, including on every citizen of the country. Parliament can call anybody here in terms of the law, but without the means to do that, we are just reduced to a paper tiger. So, look, it's a matter which we may not exhaustively deal with today or this year, but it's a matter which I believe, Speaker, we can put up processes and explore avenues and come with concrete proposals on how we think what will be the best funding model. I mean, honorable members, all the issues that you raise of constituency offices, everything, all of them fall within the ambience of the funding model of Parliament. We can do that. We can say this is the kind of the constituency offices we want to have. There must be declared national key points, there must be this and that. Yeah, there must be security, there must, yeah. Whatever imagination or impression you can have of the best model of a constituency office. But if that is not commensurate with the funding model, I can tell you it's just a castle in the sky. So let's go, Speaker, and excogitate on these matters. And if there is a way in which we have to engage our correspondents in the executive, let's engage whoever matters and see how best we can improve on the funding model of Parliament. Thank you so much. My co-chair has said that she's covered by honorable members, so I'm going to hand over to you, Speaker. And honorable members have also said some of the issues here are still going to be presented. Yeah, but that does not mean we take the right from you to be generous with your answers. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lechanyane. And I want to start with where you ended, because I think the issues that you have just raised, indeed, in my view, are very important for this committee. And I think this is where, in our view, we will have to bounce some of these proposals, maybe before we can go broader into the two houses. On the issue of regulations, indeed, it's what we are working on. It was also affirmed by the Speakers Forum that we need to be quicker. I also want to indicate that in the last administration, there was also a proposal for the review of the Act. But we have agreed that while that work is going on, regulations are very important so that it creates certainty. With regards to the shifts, I think the issue you're raising about what legal framework do we now need to have? And I would like to take us back to the work that was done, rather led by the leader of government business in the last year, if not a year before. And I know at that time, all of us just thought the issue of coalitions are a matter of municipality. But actually, he was raising a point that let's reimagine what type of framework legally are we going to need? Should at any time at province and at national we have coalitions? And it was interesting that there was a lot of work that was done and various perspectives shared. I do think it will be important for this administration, in my view, to really have certainty on that matter. So we can't leave it to chance. We just need to have a legal framework that would be very clear that if, you have a coalition government, how does it manifest, what thresholds, if any, because that had not also been decided, and how does that impact on, how you work with the legislature and other arms of state. So I do think we need to take on that work as Parliament, because we were invited as Parliament actually in that consultation that was done. For me, is for us to be able to take that work on and really give to the necessary committee that must drive the process. And I would say it will be the Constitutional Review Committee that would have to do that work. Chair, on the issue of how we might creatively work on our oversight side by side with public participation. And I think it's a matter that other members have raised. It is, in my view, about time that we really have to ask ourselves, if we say as part of our outcome we want meaningful and adequate participation, what does that mean in real sense? And therefore, how does that relate into the best funding proposition? I want to assure you, Chair and members, that we have started the engagement with National Treasury. And we just used one element, lawmaking. And we said to them, if you bring a legislation, let's say from the executive, it won't be different even if it's a private member's bill. One of the things you'll have to do is to actually have the committee first looking at the legislation and then determine how they would want to work on that legislation. Part of that process, it's oversight. Either people coming in or members of Parliament going to the 9 provinces. So you calculate that cost. And we were saying if you were to say the flights of 11 members, the accommodation of those 11 members, even if you have got the government rate in a particular hotel or a B&B and so on, you come back, you work on that legislation. There might be a need to do further, engagement with society. You do that. So if you really look at how much it takes just to have one piece of legislation, if it's a Section 76, it has to go to the provinces. That situation is replicated. So when Treasury sits and reflects on funding of parliamentary work, you need to take that into consideration if we really want to have meaningful participation of our citizens. But I agree that the funding model would also, in my view, and this is my personal view, will require us as members of Parliament to really ask ourselves, when we pass that budget, do we actually ensure that the resources that go are adequate, have been utilized, are justifiable? A lot of us here around October, November, we sit in the BRRRs. We can see that this line budget item has been there for 3 years. And when you look at the spending, it's 2%. And the question that we need to ask ourselves, is that budget line really required, or we just put it to shelve and park the money as departments? When it comes to the approval of budget, who does it? It's us. But the unfortunate thing that happens when it comes to the passing of the budget, chairs, we sit and go to our party position. And then we object, we call for a division, so we don't deal with these matters that come from the committee where we're all convinced that 5 budget lines in the Department of Basic Education, for instance, have not been moving. And yet you are complaining that you don't have money for infrastructure and for dealing with the toilets and additional classes. Why are you not moving this money from this allocation to that allocation? And be able to say as Parliament, if that doesn't change, we are not passing these items of the budget. I don't think we've reached that point, in my view, because equally, if we were to be able to do that when it comes on the Parliament budget, all of us collectively as members of Parliament, we can be able to say, no, the budget of Parliament needs to increase. Because we vote. And I think we've not yet used the power that we have. We outsource it. It becomes even more obvious when it comes to Parliament. I always laugh inwardly. Because Parliament, it's PAMED. It's a piece of legislation of Parliament. So we can decide as Parliament to pilot a bill to repeal or amend or do anything with power. But all the time, we sit and cry as though we've got no power. That board is our creation. If you look at the membership of the PAMED board, it's members of Parliament and members of the provincial legislature, nobody else. But we nitpick as though there's somebody somewhere. And it's like we outsource it to somebody. The executive actually has got nothing to do with PAMED. There's no minister actually responsible for PAMED law. It's us. But all the time, when it comes to this legislation, we pussyfoot it. Similarly with the Parliamentary Villages Board. So at some stage in the life of this Parliament before this one, there was a decision that this function of creating a facility for parliamentarians when they are not in their homes will be developed and it will be given to the Minister of Public Works to actually. So the question we're asking, Honorable Dagmo, about the budget, we don't have the budget of the villages. We don't have the budget of the transportation that you use. So if there's a leak, we can't do anything, we'll cry with you. If a bus doesn't have an ablution facility, we'll also cry with you. We'll cry together to Minister of Public Works. We can't deal with it. And yet, this is a facility that affects members. So at the end, the Minister of Public Works will stand there and say, this thing takes too much of my money, but the money follows the function. That budget goes to him, it doesn't come to Parliament. So it's a matter that I think we will have to debate. And anyone who have been here since 1994, each term of office, all of us always complain about the service we receive from Public Works in terms of maintenance, in terms of this and this, but we don't come with an alternative. When a bus has not arrived, some of you call the STP to say the bus has not come. He will be generous enough and listen and say, yeah, I'll try, honorable member, but it is basically a function of Public Works. And I think it's something that we need to reflect. Is it ideal? Secondly, the issue, Honorable Mawuto, you're raising, it's correct, about whether or not is it value for money to keep on these villages, or we should look at an alternative. I just want to say, in the 5th administration, continue to the 6th, that recommendation of having a housing allowance or even having a block of flats closer to Parliament, which can be used by Parliament to hire out during holidays, was raised with the Commission for Remuneration of Public Office Bearers. So it's not like the matter was not raised. But unfortunately, they've not yet made a determination. But those recommendations, the committee that was engaging with the Commission on behalf of Parliament did raise those issues. With respect to the issues of committees and space, I must say that we have tried to also get, committee rooms from, Chapter 9 institutions. That's where some of the committees' rooms are. We will continue to explore, engaging with the province and municipality, but I would say it might also require from the programming committees to work with the chairperson so that, there is a kind of rotation. I just want to say to members, even when Parliament was still active, we didn't have enough committee rooms. But what would happen is committees knew that this cluster is the justice cluster on Monday, Tuesday is the economic cluster committees, Thursday. So there was always a rotation, which enabled members to make sure that there's adequate committee rooms and space. Where there might be an extraordinary time where a particular committee might meet and there's no space, we used to use Townhouse Hotel, which was the closest, and the Parliamentary Hotel. Those were the two hotels that were used interchangeably when there was a problem with space. But most of the time, it was in the programming that process was managed. On the issue of the investigation on the fire, I'm sure the Secretary will be able to give a briefing on the process. It's not yet complete, but there's a certain work that was done. On the issue of the rebuild program, a number of members have made. Maybe let me start about the question that was raised by an honorable member with respect to the role of protection service vis-a-vis police. Firstly, Parliament is a national key point, which means there's a particular obligation that the police services have in the protection of Parliament. And they are in the perimeter. So they will be at the gates, you're static. When you enter Parliament, they'll be there. But they are not involved in the protection of members and other facilities inside. Some members were here in the 5th administration will recall. Members of Parliament were very vociferous about what are police doing inside the precinct, because that's not their job. Members who stay in villages, they know, even when they've got a problem of theft in the villages, static unit in the villages doesn't take your case. They will tell you, go to your nearest police station. Actually, I remember in the 5th administration, when we met with the police service, they actually said, even being static in those villages, we're just doing you a favor. Because in terms of our responsibility, we are not supposed to do that. But through the engagement with Parliament, from early on, even before 94, there was agreement that at least the static unit will be the police service. So that process led to Parliament having to develop a protection service, the men and ladies in white shirts, to actually deal with issues of disorderly conduct and other issues of Parliament safety and security issues. So on a daily basis, they do that kind of work that they're supposed to do as per their mandate. And it was very specific as to what their expected mandate is supposed to be. But whether they are there and the police's mandate is very clear as a national key point. It's on the perimeter, not in the precinct. And it's not something that is unique to South Africa. All parliaments, you will find that there will be the sergeant at arms. In some parliaments, your sergeant at arms will be your former military people and so on. But you will never see actual policemen in the precincts of parliament doing what is expected to be the function of the police. With regard to the rebuilding, I think we would all recall that after the fire, it took time for investigations to really see the extent of the burning. Because I remember the first team, which was appointed by Public Works at the time, they went in, they had to immediately go out because fire was still continuing, even though it was normal like your flames. Thank you. So at the end, when that work was done, demolition needed to happen after whatever contractual arrangements were decided. But because part of parliament is heritage, you cannot demolish without the presence of the South African Heritage Authority. And that's where a lot of time has actually been wasted. Because for every little demolition, it has to be checked whether or not this artifact is still of use or not use, whether it is heritage or no heritage. On the issue of the detail on rebuilding and how the decision was made, I'm sure that the Secretary will do when he presents on the 28th of May on this issue to say what were the process that Parliament, Public Works and National Treasury. Because sometimes it's like there was no engagement. March, sorry, 28 March. So there was a consultation and I think a decision at the end was made as to why Parliament needed to drive this process on its own and why then an implementing agent, SDBSA, was appointed. And I'm sure we will then, through the Secretary, share what are the contractual arrangements between Parliament and DBSA, but also what is the steering committee that does that monitoring and supervision and engaging with DBSA, which includes Public Works as well as Parliament in that regard. With issues of how will we ensure that those outcomes which we put there are realized, particularly the after raising the quality of life? In my view, we will have to have indicators. And this is the outcome of the work that was done by the small team representing parties in working on the priorities, who actually framed and say, we need to say how will we say the work that we do has really had an impact? And for me, I would actually say it's also about monitoring what the executive brings to us. For instance, if the executive says, we will build a dam in 2 years, I'm making a hypothetical example, it must be our concern to say, who will be serviced by this dam in terms of the impact to the community? And how do we make sure that when that dam happens, that realization of having accessible water to community happens? Is our legal framework enabling that to happen? And I'm raising these chairpersons because if you were to take Limpopo as an example, We're one province that has got a lot of dams. You can count them. Many of them new. But you look at those dams and where communities are, Dololo, there's no water. So the resource as water is there, but its reticulation, it's not happening. And I think it is incumbent upon us as Parliament to see whether our legal framework, in terms of that function, is it really done in a manner that that quality of life is realized? You have got districts that are water service authority. You have got a municipality that is supposed to do that reticulation. But how are they funded? How is it enabling this thing that we're talking about? So it may not be whether there is no resource in terms of money. It may not be that there is no resource in terms of water. But the constraint is because of how our legal architect is currently that is not enabling. So some of the issues might need us going back to the laws that we've passed, to the frameworks that we've agreed to. Are they really enabling us to improve the quality of life, or there are certain things that we have to change? You know, housing, for instance. You have got other spheres like your metro, which can be able to provide housing. But a person, when they go to apply for a house, they go to a municipality or go to a department of housing. So that rigmarole of how that person ends up getting a house becomes another. I mean, they will tell you there is this grant for this part of service and who qualifies, no interoperability, so Madam Badenhorst can move from Cape Town to George and still have another house. Because our systems are not interoperable. But also, if you have an intransigent metro that says we're not going to build for the poor in Benoni, what leverage does national legislation have? So those are some of the issues, in my view, that we will have to reflect on. I mean, you look at Camps Bay. Every year, you know, in Camps Bay, when there's the wind, there'll be informal settlements that burn. And those communities in Camps Bay have been there for years. So what do we all say about the integration of our cities in real sense? What legal framework allows us to do that so that that meaningful quality of life is realized for all? So for me, I think there's a lot of work that we have to do as parliamentarians in really ensuring how does our presence here in this parliament make a change in the quality of our citizens. Laws, resources, oversight, accountability. In my view, all of those are important. But we will have to really be thorough in the examination of how do we ensure that what we do here finally improves the quality of life. So what will be our indicators? I mean, the president, for instance, in the State of the Nation address, he highlighted the issue of water. And we all agreed it is important. But what will it take us to look at the current architecture of water delivery in South Africa? And where there are gaps, how can we as lawmakers enable that to actually be realized? by either making laws or repealing some of those instruments. The issue of operational budget, it is indeed little. 353 million, that's very little. And that includes the support staff, which is why we were saying there is a need to have a transparent budget so that a committee, a select committee, when they plan from April 1, before April 1, obviously, because they can't plan already when the financial year is starting, they need to know that for 2025-26, as a portfolio committee and a select committee of Home Affairs, I've got 5 million in my budget. Then they are able to plan to say, okay, this year we will have 2 oversight. This year we will have public participation. But if they plan as we are doing now, you plan from the dark, and then the chairperson, chair of chairs indeed would look and say, "Sexelu 5 rand, so you can't go." So that's what we have committed to relook at. Actually, not to relook at. We've taken a decision at EXCO that we're going to change it, and we'll present it here to you so that we can be at one, and you can advise us whether it's helping us or not. On the issue of the elephant in the room, which all of you have discussed, about the non-government organization and their role, I just want to take us back in the first administration. A lot of NGOs and community-based organizations that were funded externally prior to 1994. Those donors, most of them stopped the funding because they assumed that the new democratic state will then be able to support CBOs or NGOs that have to do work that is complementary to the state. That is why within social development, you have got the National Development Agency, which fund CBOs and non-government organizations. But indeed, our lived experience is that you have a gap in terms of regulation. And I think all of us have spoken that you've got a misnomer, and that will go for churches as well, where overnight somebody can wake up and open a church or an NGO, and nobody actually knows what are the elements of what we have. And I think 30 years on, my view is we need to sit back and reflect. What do we need? And I don't think regulation means suppression. But regulation means there must be a clear framework. We must all understand the transparency that is demanded in the state, the transparency that is demanded in Parliament must be a transparency that is demanded from everybody, so that we don't fall over each other in not knowing who does what. Because my understanding is that that work must complement in achieving that, raising the quality of life, so that we don't end up where Parliament appropriate budget for this, and we have got a non-government organization that goes outside, appropriate funding for the same function, but nobody knows the impact that it has in society. So it's something that, unfortunately, as a speaker, I will delegate it to members. Because I think it's something that we need to reflect. And maybe the dialogue of our 30 years journey is important, not only just to celebrate, which we must, but at the same time to say, these were the conditions in 1994 when the democratic state took over. these were the institutions that were set up, these were the laws to support a particular ideal in our constitution, but our life experience of 30 years requires us to make particular changes. And how do we do those? And I would say, Chair, without going into all of the detail, in my view, there are those political questions that will require members of parliament to really engage on in evaluating the moment we are in, informed by the journey we've traversed. But the others, as I've said, Chair, will actually come from the discussion and the debate. On the issue of relocation, because I don't think it will come from the presentation, the issue of relocation, it's a very interesting story. It started in '94, yes, when it was still Minister of Public Works, Jeff Khatebe. A lot of study was done. I kumbula very well. And I think at the end, it was weighing whether, given the challenges that our country faced and the needs of resources, would it be an appropriate decision to make at that particular time? And that's why it didn't proceed. It again came to the second phase, where it was, at that time, I think, Minister Stau. Again, it didn't move forward. The last time was when Minister Zigalala done all the work, and I think, again, the priority was, where do you put the balance? And I do think there is merit in us reflecting, rather than suspending the matter, because whether you put parliament in Gauteng, whether in KZN or Free State, you will still require the same infrastructure of supporting members who don't come from that province, in terms of creation of whether they housing subsidy or whether you build to, and the creation of parliament. And I think the other issue was, if you leave, I know some study was done, will there be occupancy for the current legislature as it is? At some stage, as part of consultation, PAP was asked, and the challenge for PAP was that for members who come outside South Africa, it will be another added cost from flying to Joburg and flying to Cape Town. It might not be appealing. But it's one of those issues that at some stage was reflected on. So in my view, will be to really say, let's discuss this matter without emotion. Because in other countries where parliaments have moved one direction or the other, there had been particular stimulus. If you look at Brazil, for instance, Brazil was very deliberate that they were moving parliament to Brasilia. One, because of congestion within Sao Paulo, but two, it was a development objective. Dodoma, if you recall, in Tanzania, Tanzania was in Dar es Salaam was the capital, administrative and parliament, but they took a decision in the 5th Parliament, which has been realized in the 6th Parliament, to move to Dodoma. Again, a development objective. So I think for us, we will need to be dispassionate in engaging on this debate to say, what is it that we want to realize? I remember at some stage, Musiwa Lekota, who was a Minister of Defense at the time, he really argued for Free State because he said it was central, but also it would help to, it would help to develop, the economy of the Free State. There will be tourism, there will be consul and embassies that would come there. There were various factors. And I think Gauteng, the arguments was you will have both the executive and the legislature in one, so it will reduce costs from the executive in flying down to Parliament. I mean, other people are saying today that debate may be mute because you have got technology. So, do you still need to move in any way? Or you can actually interact with those departments online? But I'm just saying, when we discuss this matter, maybe we must say, what would be our intended objective? Will it just be cost cutting for the executive, or will we use it as a development agenda? And if so, where will be the best location? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. We can do our work online, Speaker, but I'm laughing with the co-chair here that I still want to hear a story of a person who went home online. Honorable members, we have decided to give you a 10 minutes break so that we can come back and take the presentation from the Secretary of Parliament. Okay. No, that is a fair point.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, Chairperson, co-chairs. Can I just raise, I don't know if it's a point of order.
Yeah.
Chair, you had, I think you proposed that we consider a break and then we come back. Now, I think we probably have scheduled this meeting until 6. And if you look at the program, we wanted to allocate the secretary 40 minutes for the presentation and then an hour discussion and then your closing remarks. So all I want to raise, I mean, we know we've got tomorrow, we've got Wednesday, we've got Thursday, and we've got Friday. Would it not be possible, and it depends a bit on the secretary's program as well, but that couldn't we not start with that input when we are going to do our next session? I'm just raising that. I don't know what the other members feel or what the staff feels, but it's the proposal really is to start with the secretary's presentation as a first item of the next session. Thanks.
Tomorrow.
And then what happens now? What do
Want us to adjourn now?
what do you suggest we must do now?
Take a break for 20 minutes.
Yeah?
No. In fact, if you recall, our meeting was supposed to start at 6. Yes. So can we do the work? Let's adjourn for 10 minutes, we come back and the ST.
No, what we can do, we may not break if there are members who want to go out. We can, we can allow them, and maybe to reconcile everything, those who want to have comfort break, those who want us to start tomorrow, and those who want us to continue. Let's allow the secretary to make a presentation, and then after the presentation we can leave. Is it so? We allow him to present, and then thereafter we can leave.
The questions is for tomorrow.
Yeah, they will go home and ruminate over the.
And let's remember that tomorrow we're starting at 6 o'clock in the evening, so we might go up until 11. So, yeah, we're starting at 6.
That means I've got the scope, and then I must do something in the afternoon and come back.
I think we can still look at the issue of 6 o'clock tomorrow. Is there, co-chair, from the NCOP, we don't have anything? Yes, okay.
We have PGIR, some of us tomorrow, during the day. That is why we agreed to the 6 o'clock.
Honorable members, there is a register circulating. No? Please make sure that you.
The program of the
please
committees.
make sure that you sign the register.
I'm saying, Chair, this was released, I'm sure, 2 weeks ago. No one complained about it. So we are not going to discuss it now.
Yeah. We it's here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, Secretary, you can't start with the presentation because I see most of the members are out. Did I say 10 minutes?
Yeah, and I said 5, but I can't. And when I requested him, I said 5.
I wanted to cancel the break. Secretary, I wanted you to present, and when I saw honorable members going out for comfort, I sympathize with you. So now they are back. Let's run over the presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chairperson, and good afternoon, this evening, rather. Good evening to Co-Chairpersons, Madam Speaker, as well as honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee. The areas I will focus on would be complementing the overall outlook that Madam Speaker has covered largely. And in those instances where the slides have already been emphasized, I would jump on those areas. For instance, this slide has largely been well canvassed, including the one on the overview of the work since 1994. But essentially, to preempt what will be covered on Friday, the 7th Parliament priorities really present a turning point on the shift of Parliament from the work that has largely been activity-based, activity-focused, but with an aspirational intent to move it to outcomes and impacts. So when honorable members asked earlier on, how would we measure, I think it was Honorable Mautwe, how would we measure the kind of impact of Parliament to citizens on the aspect of raising the quality of life for citizens? The macro framework of the 7th Parliament already captures the approach to dealing with that. One of the frameworks we have developed last year, which is part of the components of intervention areas for the strategic plan of Parliament, is around developing what we call country outcomes indicator dashboard. Country outcomes indicator dashboard. That dashboard will be for Parliament to measure the laws that it passed by the time they are sent to the executive, with all the outline made on the preamble for each law. We will now be able to measure to say, is NHI working? Is the law protecting farm workers working, or different groups? So that Parliament is able to track the national indicators of either growth, if it was a growth objective, or social intervention and so on. So that country national indicator dashboard is one of the interventions that Parliament is currently going to work on, based on the framework we completed already last year. At an appropriate time, it will then be shared as part of the quarterly reports once we develop what we call a data analytics that would allow work done in each committee to track the impact of oversight, public participation, and so on. So that's broadly the focus of how we will shift to the impact and outcomes. On the area of the budget, I think it has been covered overall by the presentation the speaker has covered. And I would like to emphasize more on the performance of expenditure. Honorable members will see that in the overall, as at the end of Q3, the performance of that overall budget is consistent with our projections that we planned, save for only the last leg where you see the rebuilding that we have been lagging significantly. And that lagging is more informed, which we will cover in the presentation of the rebuild, more about delays that have been occasioned on the actual start of the project. And that start has got a number of iterations that we will outline in detail as to why so far we have not broken ground on the rebuilding, but rather focused on the demolition work. So that's the only budget, that line item you will see that it hobbled the overall performance of budget of Parliament. The rest of others are within 70, 79%, which by the time we project end of March, the budget of Parliament would have performed consistent with the projections made. Some of the budget pressures that Madam Speaker have outlined, they speak largely to a cumulative impact that Parliament has suffered, similar to other departments, but more heavy knocks on the side of Parliament, especially on its work. If you look at the last 3 financial years, we have had budget cuts of 214, 261. And this has happened at a time when the cumulative knock-on from 2016 to date amounts to 2.2 billion, the cuts on the budget of Parliament every year. So for that period of 9 years, you will be able to see that it became much more aggressive, the cuts during the COVID period, which we were not only affected, it was the reality of the country's budget. But what it did, it visited us with a cumulative impact of 2.2 billion. And correspondingly, we then had to redirect funds from different divisions to fund cooperations of Parliament. And where we had impacts out of what is called payments from the National Revenue Fund, the issues of PAMED, and when there's annual adjustment for members, if Treasury budgeted less, we've got to meet the obligation as determined in terms of that. And then it takes a year for them to refund. So the rethinking of the funding model of Parliament will then respond adequately to these issues, because we will now be able to do what is called activity-based costing. What does it take for a bill to be championed, whether it's a Section 74, 5, or 6, across 9 provinces, not the sampling of 3 districts in a province. Our provinces on average have got 6 districts. Others have got even 10, like KZN. So if we sample 3, our courts are saying to us, you are failing the test of meaningful and adequate participation. And for us to be able to determine that, it means we must be able to cost every aspect of our budget. So the funding model is being worked currently. We're working with FFC. And as it emerges, we said by June, we must be able to have a draft budget, which a draft funding model, which when it has been canvassed internally, the executive authority will then guide further work on how it is taken forward. So it's work that is being done, just to emphasize how we're dealing with that part. On the area of PAMED, as Madam Speaker has indicated, from 1994, the first 5 years began to show the relationship between determination of the annual increase of medical aid, and it's done by a body called a board of funders of healthcare. So when they determine, they don't look at the inflation for the country to say it's 5% or 6%. The medical inflation generally globally would be either average 9, 11. So if the funding correspondence from the national fiscus is 5%, you have 9%. So it means from the funds of Parliament, we must carry out that. At this point, we sit with a technical solvency ratio of 1.2 billion rand on the medical aid. So once it has been reviewed as indicated, it will have to respond to those going concern issues that we are raising. On the performance of the budget over the MTEF overall, we are reflecting, honourable members, just the impact of it. For instance, an amount of 521 million rand is the current underfunding, and you can see in the breakdown for each year, we request a certain amount, will be allocated a certain amount. So the 3 elements that constitute 521 million, they are on the cost of employment, there's underfunding there overall, and also the goods and services underfunding of 131, and the capital underfunding is also around 37. So total, it constitutes that 521 million for this year. projecting on what we have received on the estimate of national expenditure, we can already see that about 1.6 billion and 507 million is what we see over the the next 3 financial years. So those engagements that Madam Speaker has outlined with the Minister of Finance would be underpinned by this funding model so that we can justifiably say this is the extent of underfunding. Not only to say underfunding, but this is the extent of the underfunding. On the overall performance, as indicated already, for this financial year 24-25, we currently sit at verified performance for 3 quarters up until December at 70%, and we project that we will be able to meet these indicators by end of the financial year, save for a target of the rebuilding, which we have fallen behind because of the time it takes to drive the demolition project. Next slide. The human capital status will be detailed tomorrow by the presentation on the human capital, except to highlight that this is our current staff complement, 1,195. We currently sit at a vacancy rate of 22%, and the co-chair has indicated that we need to move in speed to fill vacancies, especially in those critical areas like interpretation services, language services in general, legal services. We have started, Honorable Mautwe, to fill capacity of legal services in areas where it has been undercapacitated. But we are also looking at ensuring that each and every committee, including the new ones, we are able, additional ones rather, we are able to fill all critical vacancies of researchers and committee secretaries. The capacity building interventions, both for members as well as for staff, Madam Speaker indicated that with the current profile for both houses, you see that you have an average of 54%, but the approach general for all members, capacity building is a main focus area, which over the next 2 years, we will continue doing that under the funding of the European Union program. And where members have not been funded, I think Honorable Klesha, yes, you did indicate what happens when a member, what happens when a member cannot sit for exams and so on. So the program is such that there's a learner agreement between Parliament and the member gets funded. There are instances where a member will be funded, but for whatever reason, the member cannot sit for exams. So in those instances, they will ask for either supplementary or a new date, depending on the justified reasons for that. If a member hasn't passed on the program, the member will then fund that course, will self-fund that course. But in other instances, we are able to pay for members in good time. And we would encourage, in instances where there's no members that are funded, our Office for Legislative Sector Support, there's a manager dealing with that with all tertiary institutions, and we will be able to deal with that. So those could either be sent to me or to the relevant member of staff handling that. They will present tomorrow in detail about that area. So on the area of stabilization of the organization is fairly stable. Even in areas where it had restlessness, there is now relative harmony with established structures for engagement with organized labor, engagement with staff, regular update on many things, and we don't envisage difficulties. Honorable Badenos, you ask how many members of staff work from home and what is happening around that. We currently have a 3 approach for members of staff, occasioned by the reality of office damage. 410 of our members of staff are here full-time. We lost offices both for members and staff. So out of those 409 members, 442 work on what we call hybrid. So on certain days they are here, on certain days they work from home. And about 160 staff members work full-time from home. So with the combination of all those factors, we are now reprioritizing which staff must evidently be full-time, so that the work of committees does not depend on a committee secretary who works from home, but to be here where members are full-time here. And what we are doing to respond to fullness of return, we are currently upgrading in the 90 Plain Street. We started with members for 2 floors. We are now going to focus from this month of March to start preparatory work for the further offices in the 90 Plain Street. We will start with 3 more offices to prioritize members who currently don't have offices, the 54 members, but also deal with the staff. So the return will be gradualized in the first 3 months, where we'll be starting the rebuild, so that all staff members of Parliament are back at work to service the members. So that's the overarching status of the human capital. On the org realignment, one of the reflections of members in November, they said they would like to see this work being concluded and where it is and when are we filling the vacant positions at senior level and so on. We have started this work. We have given ourselves a timeline of end of March. And you will see, honorable members, in the second slide of the various stages of the project. It is a 5-stage project. And so far we have completed stage 3. We are left with stage 4, which would now start by April in terms of implementation and conclusion of the project. It's an all-encompassing project, full participation of labor, but responding on the adjustments we need to complement staff for both houses. So we have given ourselves as at end of March, focusing on 22 departments of Parliament, but also ensuring that we are able to conclude by 31 March and the go-live date incrementally for each division to start on the 1st of April. In terms of the detail, again, honorable members, will be given tomorrow when the full project is given. On the area of the highlights for the rebuild project, as indicated, Development Bank of Southern Africa is the implementation agent appointed by Parliament in 2022, essentially as an infrastructure funding and implementation agent of the state. Parliament appointed DBSA to be able to ensure that it's able to implement this project, given its strong track record on infrastructure delivery, but also strategically that they interface directly as a bank with full accountability in terms of the Auditor General oversight on financial management and accountability, but also the fact that this project is fully funded by National Treasury. They account to National Treasury around that project. So the detail we will give on the 28th of March will then indicate the tripartite arrangement of institutions involved on this, which is Public Works, National Treasury, and Parliament. So we have got a project steering committee comprising of those 3 departments, so that everyone has full sight of what is happening, and DBSA then accounts in terms of project progress around that. At a hierarchy level, in terms of governance oversight, Parliament determined in the 6th Parliament that the Joint Standing Committee is the committee that has got responsibility relevant in terms of accountability for us to present around this area. On the asset management, as we progress going forward, Public Works is able to be alive to each and every area of project that we are involved on. The progress so far, the project, honorable members, has got 2 work streams. Project work stream number 1 is what was called new assembly, the one that has been completely wrecked down. And then the second component is the old assembly. So for the new assembly, a contractor has now been appointed. It's starting on Monday with the actual construction work, the brick and mortar starting work to take over the site and then they are able to assemble their work instruments and other things and start building. And why it is only starting now is because the whole of last year, the demolition project had to be painstakingly done in accordance with the National Heritage Regulation. So every stage is permit-based, and they are able to apply their laws to determine what must be broken and what should not be broken. You have asked, Honorable Kesha, what will happen to the items that have been picked up from those, so that we don't have a contractor taking some of those items. Between April, May, and June last year, we had to comply with the heritage regulation to collect each and every piece of rubble and determine as per standards whether there's anything salvageable or everything falls under ruins. So you would see when we present on the 28th, we will show you how each thing is packaged with a determination of not only the financial value, but whether it can be utilized elsewhere in line with heritage. So all of those, nothing has been disposed except if it is ashes. But if it's an item that was picked up, even if it was a chair with remainder, we must determine what is the heritage status of it and so on, except something that is evidently completed. So all of that material has been packaged in line with the standards. And then the contractors that may be delayed, Honorable Badenost, there is a penalty regime applicable for any stage of the project. And that is timeline-based as per committed date. And if the contractor is not performing, there are standards inherent in the contracting, the penalty regime, and is guided by Convention of Penalties Act that governs all of those to determine the impact of the delay and the cost of the delay. And if a contractor has not done anything to hand over to the other, there's a daily charge that is imposed around the delay by a new contract. So that work of the new assembly starting, and we will detail the work outline once they start. And then by April, work stream number 2, old assembly, is scheduled to start. So this coming Friday, 28th of February, the tender will be out as issued by Development Bank for the old assembly, and we envisage that they will be able to make sure that by March, the second stream contractor is in place. So the difference of them ideally must be 3 months start in between the two projects. But what we did in the overall project, the timeline given for them to complete is 20 months to complete the entirety of Parliament. So by 2026, September, the project ought to be completed overall. The issue of the dome has been indicated by Madam Speaker, and there is work being done. The only issue I would like to highlight, honorable members, is that by March, the Department of Public Works would like to have access to the dome. So we would look at it in relation to the schedule of the National Assembly and NCOP, so that if programs must be reworked, the impact of it is that they would need full access so that they start determining the acquisitions of items, which is called supportive infrastructure, the enabling works, meaning the floors and other things. So far for the sittings we've had for the debate on the DRC question, as well as the budget, it's hired infrastructure. So they're supposed to provide us with full infrastructure to dress up the facility. So in discussion between the EA and the minister, the issues of the provision of infrastructure that will be utilized for the full period of the 20 months will require acquisition. On our side, we are responsible for broadcasting and audiovisual equipment, and we're in the process of ensuring that. What are some of the challenges that we face? I think Madam Speaker has covered the question of budget constraints and what are the remedies we'll do that around funding model. The issue of revamping our obsolete infrastructure and ICT. Members raised the issue of committees, Honorable Badenost. We currently have 15 committees here, and we're hiring other committees, rooms as when we need them. And the suggestion, Honorable Mauto, you have made on the approach to other governmental departments. We currently have 10 more committees outside. And those 10 more committees are secured from other state agencies, FFC, other offices, City of Cape Town that we've been in discussion with, and other entities that have made National Youth Development Agency, and so on. So those additional 10 are available. The only limitation sometimes we suffer is the sizes of them. On average, we need a 30 to 45 size committee rooms. And in others, we will find that the AV broadcasting infrastructure is not there. So out of the 15 we have, 9 of those here in the precinct are hybrid enabled. And the investment we are making on the AV would enable us to activate more of our committees on the digitized approach. So in short, Chairperson, in the overall, the recommendation is for the Joint Standing Committee to note the overview, acknowledging that the detail will come from the engagements of tomorrow, which we will be taking through. The constituency offices overall, Madam Speaker has indicated, we currently budget 571 million rand for constituency offices. And of that 571 million, it covers 3 components, what we call leadership allowance, and we also have constituency admin support allowance, and the third component is general administration, is done in accordance with the policy of Parliament in terms of the funding component of it. I would like to leave it there. If I've missed anything, Honorable Court Chairperson, we will be able to deal with those tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the brevity of your presentation. You gave us a summary of the issues that we're having to deal with during the week. Honorable members, I don't know, do you have any question or input to make on the brief presentation? You are still ruminating? Oh. You want to make a proposal? Let's listen to Honorable Nilmay first, and then we'll come to your proposal.
No, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. And it gives us a good idea of where everything is. The only thing that I wanted us to monitor very carefully is that when the construction starts, the Western Cape, and specifically here, they have a lot of challenges with the construction mafia. And the delays, the only thing that, and I know that from in my other lifetime, I was public safety. We had a working relationship between City of Cape Town and that on crime and the construction mafia, extortion, you name it. There is a challenge here. So I think with regards to the construction going ahead, for it to keep to its timelines, the security area, which is good from the precinct, it has got security and there's police, that one would just be mindful that that kind of situation does not interfere with the progress of the building of our Parliament. Thanks.
Honorable Takude.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I want to propose that we don't get into discussion of this presentation. Let's allow for the units tomorrow, under the leadership of the STP, to make their presentations, because in those presentations we might find that there is overlap into this the presentation that the STP has just made now. Let's take the discussions tomorrow after the presentation. Thanks.
Your input is unanimously accepted. Honorable Dagmo, is your hand up, or were you trying to raise the hand?
It was up very quickly just to second
Okay.
Deputy Chief.
Yeah. It looks like we have unfortunately come to the end of today's business. Honorable Speaker, tomorrow we will be meeting with the divisions, and the overwhelming feeling amongst members is that if you may have other commitments that may take you away from these engagements, you must know that this committee supports you in your work, and it understands why you may not be present. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that offer, Chair, but I had put aside the whole week because of my experience in the portfolio committee while I was on the other side. So I will not be presenting, but I will sit in just to support the team.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, that is welcome. We were being considerate as a committee, but we welcome that gesture. It shows leadership, and we will be with you for the whole week until Friday. Anything to say before I call the meeting off?
Unless there's somebody who's going to die, I would wait for you to close.
Pungana, Tagude, Mautwe, Nilmei, Feni, Dagmo,
Chair,
Badenhorst.
the only thing is in regard to Friday, just wanted to ask through the chairs, maybe to the committee secretary, whether we have been able to secure a venue that allows hybrid. That was just one idea that I was having, so that people could, be here, but also if they weren't around, they could join. But if the committee is still busy securing that, it's just a request if Friday's meeting could be available for hybrid, if there's a venue, but not for discussion in the meeting, just a reminder.
Yeah, the committee secretary will inform us in due course. Badenhorst, Clark, you are fine. Speaker, honorable members, secretary, we have unfortunately come to the end of today's engagements.